Welcome to Environmental News and Notes. I'm Marilyn Ellie, and today I'd like to share with you something that happened in my house. We had a party featuring Senator George Latimer and Nancy Vann, who is running for District 1 councilperson. If you're hearing this, both Senator Latimer and Nancy Vann are probably candidates that you will have an opportunity to vote for. What we're trying to do today is give you an idea of their position on different issues facing the county, like the airport, affordable housing, Indian Point. They were both quite clear and outspoken, as I think you'll find in the forthcoming video. So I hope you enjoy finding out more about your candidates. If you agree with them, I certainly encourage you to get involved. And they have regional offices if you'd like more information. It's not hard to find them on Facebook or on their website. So democracy really needs a lot of attention, and the forthcoming election is going to be one way that you can find out about the issues and pay attention to what's going on in our community.
Nancy, welcome. Thank you so much. You're another one who's really working for the good.
Well, giving it all I've got.
Yeah. Welcome, Nancy Vann, candidate District 1.
Thanks, guys. And I just wanted to say that because George and I share an office in Peekskill, it's very easy to come out and make calls and go door knocking for both of us. Berenice over here is doing like lists of doors to knock and people to call in connection with George's team who are there. He's a wonderful, wonderful candidate for county executive, and I couldn't be asked to be on a better team. I am not a salesperson, and coming out and talking to people, I tend to get a bit into the weeds. I am an attorney, and when I went to law school because I had been in a terrible car accident and broke everything on this side. So while I was going to physical therapy a couple of days a week, I volunteered for legal services in Manhattan called Mobilization for Youth Legal Services. And back then, I actually pretty much qualified as youth. And I loved what I was doing. I was taking battered women to family court and preparing documents and doing interviews with them so that they could get divorces. And I said, I really need to be able to do a better job at this. I really need to know more about this. So I decided I would go back and go to law school. In order to do that, I had to finish my undergraduate work. So I went to Columbia University. I graduated summa cum laude. I went to Yale Law School. While I was there, Ronald Reagan was elected. And he closed down all of the legal services offices almost without exception. The attorneys I'd been working for and with were out on the streets looking for jobs. And the folks at the law school were forming these, Federalist societies and a lot of very conservative things. So I started a little law journal there called the Yale Law and Policy Review. And our motto was that we were going to represent views that were underrepresented in the policy formation process. Now that's pretty legally phrased. But what we wanted to do is really speak up for people who never got a seat at the table, that weren't on television, that couldn't donate huge amounts of monies to candidates. One of the guys that I spoke to on primary day in Peekskill, I had to go, after I voted, I had to go to the Dollar Tree and buy some supplies, some paper clips and stuff for our office. And I said, are you going to go vote? And he said, no, I don't get it off until 11 o'clock tonight and the polls will be closed. I said, well, did you get to vote this morning? He said, no, I have to work 2 jobs to support my family. Those are the people we need to stand up for. Those are the people that don't have a voice, that we need to be their voice. And I was told this was going to be a really hard race against John Testa, who used to be the mayor of Peekskill, and who is the minority leader in the county legislature. And I said, well, we can't just fold up our house, fold our cards, take our football, go home and say, we can't do this. I spent 4 years now fighting a pipeline that's going next to Indian Point, and we're still fighting it. In October, we go to the D.C. Circuit for oral argument. We are not going to give up. We are not going to cede the field to the John Testas and the Rob Astorinos. We are out there to win. I'm not a sacrificial lamb candidate, which is what George was talking about. When there's a race that they think is too hard to win, they put somebody in as a name and don't really expect much. I'm not that. I'm a fighter. I stood in front of my tree and stopped Spectra Pipeline from cutting down our trees for a day. As I've always said, well, if we had 360 people doing that, we could stop them for almost a year. And that's where we're going. I'm also the head of the Peekskill Housing Authority, and we talk about affordable housing, but in addition to affordable housing, we need low-income housing. In our Peekskill Housing Authority, our waiting list is closed. When we opened our waiting list, we were so overwhelmed that we could only take people that were seniors and disabled. And there are thousands of people in Peekskill who need low-income housing. These are people who were maybe in a car accident like I was. I was on welfare after my accident. I'd been promoting rock concerts, and you can't do that when you're in a body cast. So I lost my car, my apartment, my job. People need a safety net, and not just the $230,000 low-income housing that they're proposing as low-income as affordable housing for the new project that's being built in Peekskill. I think the groundbreaking was yesterday. But how can somebody who's a nurse's aide, how can somebody who works as in a janitorial job, how can somebody who's a teacher's aide, how can those people afford even what they consider affordable housing? And where are they supposed to live? So in addition to the affordable housing, I really think we need to step up in this county and support low-income housing. We don't actually administer the Section 8 housing in our city, but I've talked to the folks that do. And people out there that have gotten Section 8 vouchers, which would allow them to get a private apartment, after being on the waiting list for years and years, a waiting list that's also closed, they can't find an apartment that will take it. And we can't turn our backs on the most disadvantaged. The Trump administration, the Astorino administration, it keeps trying to pit the middle class, the working class, against the folks who are disabled, who have grown up in poverty, who don't have an education that could get them a job that would get them a $230,000 apartment. And we can't let them divide us that way. We have to be true to what we believe. And I make no bones about it. I'm a progressive Democrat. I sometimes say I'm on the Elizabeth Warren wing of the Democratic Party, but I'm going to have to say I'm on the George Latimer wing of the... because everything that George said up here is something that I agree with. So after I got out of law school, there was legal services completely decimated. I went to a Wall Street firm. I had student loans. I had to get a job. Those were the jobs that were available. So I know what's wrong with Wall Street. I worked for a Wall Street firm for 2 years and fled to Denmark for another 8 years. When I came back, I worked for nonprofits because I just couldn't face going back to the types of things that are done with our financial system. Eventually, a friend called me and said, well, there's this job that oversees disclosure for corporations and for mutual funds, and they need somebody that will actually keep them honest, and I think you could do that. So my last job, before I retired to have my ankle replaced, I'm bionic. Before I retired to get my ankle replaced, I worked for mutual funds, making sure that every prospectus, every ad that went out there was the truth. Now we have people, because they don't have to comply with something like even the SEC regulations, which are way too lax, they feel like alt-truths are perfectly acceptable in this society. And we can't allow that to happen to our financial system. We can't allow that to happen to our political system. We can't allow that to happen to our neighborhoods and to our county. And so I am here to be the person who takes down the legislature. We want to be the legislature that George Latimer deserves. We want to be the legislature that backs up his call to audit the budgets for the last years that Astorino has been in there, the last 8 years. We want to stop privatizing the airport, because we know that if a private plane takes off and lands in the reservoir, we're going to have not only plane parts and jet fuel. I don't want body parts in my drinking water. We're going to make sure that Indian Point is closed very safely. We're going to make sure that the people who work there, that have the knowledge of the plant, retain their jobs. And we're going to make sure that we get money from the federal government as a waste storage, a nuclear waste storage area, to replace the money that our schools and our local governments are losing, because this company, it was not Governor Cuomo who shut it down. It was not Riverkeeper who shut it down. They had lawsuits, and it couldn't have been shut down if they hadn't agreed to drop the lawsuits. But it was Indian Point owners, Entergy, that is shutting it down, and now Astorino, standing right there next to Testa, the way I hope to stand next to George someday, saying, well, we're going to sue to keep it open. They don't come to the forums on closing Indian Point safely. They don't know one dry cask from another. But I do, because we need people who are going to look at the details. I have, piles of papers about decommissioning Indian Point. And I was up till 7 o'clock this morning reading some of that, because it's the details you need to know. We don't need to tell everybody everything, but we do need to tell them, I'm studying this. I'm on top of this. I haven't ever lied to you about it. I haven't ever tried to fool you into thinking I'm an environmentalist when I'm not. So that's one of my major issues, but now that it's beginning to spit a little bit, I think we should go to questions.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Environmental News and Notes. I hope you learned a lot about county government and the position of some of the people who are running for office and would like to guide county government. It's up to us in a democracy, the citizens of Westchester, to make choices, and the better informed those choices are, the better we all are. Thank you again for joining us.
Nobody turn us around, turn us